Okay, so a while back I did a video comparing the different PRS SE pickup types. We had an 8515S, we had a DGT-S, and we had the TCI-S. The one we were missing at the time was I didn't have one with the 5815s. And I just picked up this McCartney 594 SE, and I figured let's go ahead and compare this as much as we can to those other SE pickups. Now, I don't have all those guitars on hand right now, but I do have my CE24 Satin, which has 8515s. So we can do a direct comparison between the 5815s and the 8515s, which I think will be interesting. Now, these two guitars are slightly different in construction and scale length. So this is a shorter scale length with a mahogany body and a mahogany neck, and it's a set neck. This is a mahogany body, but it's a bolt-on maple neck, and it's a 25-inch scale length, so a little bit longer scale length. So, there will be differences in the tonality of the guitars that'll be beyond just the pickups. But I think it'll be interesting enough to hear the comparison that it's worthwhile. So before we get into kind of some playing samples, let's maybe look at some of the data associated with the different pickups. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by talking about the resistance levels of the different pickups. Now, disclaimer here, resistance isn't always necessarily a one-on-one kind of correlation with output levels from a pickup. But when you're comparing pickups from the same manufacturer, I think it can be a good way to get a sense of which ones are high output and which ones aren't. So if we look at the pickups we had done previously, the 8515s were lower output than the TCIs or the DGTs. The only difference being the TCIs, when you put them in single coil mode, are a little bit lower output. So those kind of switch into single coil mode a little bit differently than you'll get from the 8515s or the DGTs. But overall, these guitars are kind of stacked from lowest output to highest output. If you look at the 5815s, you can see they're even lower output than the 8515s. I think this is pretty much expected. The 5815s are that vintage PAF kind of pickup, and they're going to be a lower output than you'll get from the other pickups in the SC line. Now, they're not that much different than the 8515s. I think really the main difference is going to be in the EQ curve. So let's go ahead and look at that. So what I did here is, and this is the same approach I took last time, is for each guitar, what I did is I just ran it direct into Logic. So no amp models or IRs or anything in the mix. It's just the pure guitar signal coming in through the interface into Logic. I would strum an open G chord, and then I would capture via a multimeter kind of the EQ curve of the guitar. And if we remember from last time, kind of the main difference with the 8515s was had a much wider EQ curve, especially on the top end when compared to the TCS and the DGT. When we bring in the 5815s, you can see it's pretty similar to, say, the DGT in that it doesn't have that top end that you get from the 8515. It maybe even has a little bit less low end from the DGT or the TCI. So it's pretty much what you would expect. It's a very mid-focused, low output humbucker that's intended to be a very vintage kind of tone. So let's go ahead and compare the 5815 and the 8515s sonically in some sound samples, and we'll go to that now. Okay, so for this comparison, I'm going to use a preset I created on my Quad Cortex. It's a mix of kind of Fender-y kind of cleans using a Mesa Boogie Lone Star, and then I've got a Freeman model for kind of the higher gain stuff. So let's start with the 5815s, and we're on a clean tone, and I'm on the neck. So you can hear it's pushing the amp model a little bit. You're getting a little more kind of sizzle on the top end. So you can really hear kind of the difference in it. You get a much kind of smoother tone from these. Part of it's obviously is the construction of the pickups. Obviously, these pickups also have covers on them where those are uncovered, so that's going to make a difference as well. ahead and put the pickups into kind of the single coil mode and hear how they sound. So I will say, I think a little bit higher output on the 8515s, when you tap it into a single coil mode, you get a little bit more of a better, fuller tone. I said this in my review of this guitar. These pickups, when you tap them, to me, they sound a little anemic. They're just too low output for that, and I really don't care for it. Maybe if you kind of drive the gain of the amp, you can get kind of a nice kind of middle tone. So this middle tone. If you compare it to this middle tone. So I think you get a little more quack with these pickups, and it may be somewhat the wiring setup. You know, the 594 has that kind of Les Paul kind of setup with two different volumes, two different tones. This is a single volume, single tone. So there could be something in the way that's going on, that how it combines the two pickups together, that it's getting a little more quack to it, almost more of a strat. So I don't know if that's a nature of the pickups or if that's the nature of the way the guitar is set up, but it's definitely something to me that's pretty apparent. If you want that kind of, if you're looking for a guitar that'll do that kind of middle strat quack kind of sound, this is doing it much better. Let's go ahead and go to the bridge. I'm going to stay with the 8515s. So again, you're hearing the top end has a little more warmth to it. Let's go ahead and go to some gainier tones. We'll go ahead and go to kind of a mid-gain kind of thing. So we're getting a combination of things. I think the pickups are a little more output, so by nature that's going to drive a little more warmth into the amp, but you're getting that kind of 8515 top end to it. It's really up around that kind of 4K. Now I find with 8515s, you just roll the volume back just a little, maybe to 9. You start to feel more like the 5815s. But let's go to a kind of higher gain lead tone. And when I say higher gain, I'm talking about for me. I'm not kind of a metal player, so if you're looking for that kind of comparison, that's not the right video for this. But this is more of a, maybe a Satriani vibe kind of. So when you get kind of higher up on the neck, you definitely get those kind of higher end harmonics off the pick attack. Go to the neck pickup. works really well in the neck, but the bridge can get a little chirpy. So to me, the bridge pickup on this, when you go higher up like that, it's a little more pleasing in terms of the tone of the pick attack. If I go to the neck, so I say for me, for these kinds of tones, I definitely prefer the 5815s. I think it's got a little bit more warmth to it. But the one thing that this does really well, these 8515s, is if you're going higher gain stuff, and it's not something I do a lot, but if I switch over to like 90s Van Halen kind of thing, like that kind of tone, these do really well. That extra top end just adds a lot of clarity to it. So for me, I do think the 8515s are much more versatile in terms of if you want to do everything from kind of blues and hard rock through more of a metal-y kind of tone. I think these will do pretty well. They have a lot of clarity to them. You can drive kind of a really high gain amp and have it sound pretty good. The 5815s sound good too. I like that as well. I just think that these have a little more clarity to them, and you can kind of be more precise with them. I don't know. So I hope you found this comparison helpful. I'm going to try to get the DGG back in here again, and I want to do a comparison between that and the 594 so we can compare those. I think that'll be a much closer comparison. From what I've seen and what I remember, I think the DGTs will sound very similar, but maybe a little more output. But I'm interested to do like a real back-to-back comparison of those. So keep an eye out for that video. And as always, thanks for watching.